Now, concerning the issue of how do we deal with Indianapolis, the fascinating thing that's taken place in the last 2 years is that the legislature in the majority caucus and the Republican caucus has not had representation from Lake County. There's just been none. And so when Rick Niemeyer and I joined the caucus, it was an opportunity for them to turn to somebody that they know and say, well, what do you guys think? What's going on? What do you need? And the influence has been obvious. I've accomplished things in my freshman term that most freshmen could only dream about. And it's simply because I was the voice of Lake County in that caucus, and the results were positive. One of the issues was, for instance, this business personal property tax issue. Everybody was in favor of that, and I went to caucus and I said, look, we're missing the boat in Lake County. If you don't get Lake County on board with business personal property tax, and making it optional means that Lake County is not going to be on board because they can't afford to adopt that policy, the state misses out on a great opportunity. We have industry where we don't think in terms of a couple of $1 million coming into the state. We think in terms of increments of $100 million with our industry. And we need to be thinking big in this regard. And it was that argument that brought about an adjustment to the bill to allow for expanding the ability for an abatement, to make a super abatement as it was called. Unfortunately, that really didn't help, but it was at least an effort to try to address that fact. And so we have an influence and a voice that we've just not had before. Now, what's interesting is this has gone on for decades, and the Democrats ruled for decades, and yet the problem has always existed. So I'm hopeful that going forward, we're just going to do better with me representing Lake County and anybody else we can in that caucus.
Right there is why we have the situation we have, because it's political. If you don't have a Republican, you're not going to get anything. And that's what's wrong with this system, and that's what's wrong with the party. Single party rule, whether it's in Indianapolis or whether it's in Lake County, is counterproductive. It doesn't serve a valid purpose. You need to have some balance, and you need to have some checks and balances. And you can't say, well, you know what, I'm effective because I'm a Republican. And because why? Because we don't listen to Democrats. That's what we do. We don't reach across the aisle. That's the answer, Bob. That's the answer, is to reach across the aisle and to work with each other. Every board elected office I ever held had at least a Republican member on it. Every one. And I was able, and we were all able, to get along, to work together, to work productively, to come to the same conclusions, oftentimes, not always, but most often, and certainly on the major issues, because we would set aside the political aspect of it. We would set aside the fact that you're a Republican or a Democrat, and believe me, whether it's the town of Highland or the town of Sherrville or the St. John or Dyer, the politics gets thrown out the window when you realize that what you need to do and what your job is to provide services to your constituents. They could care less whether you're blue, black, brown, Republican, Democrat, communist, libertarian. They don't care. They want their services, and they want them at a reasonable price, and that's your role. We have to take the politics out of it. When I go around in the community, and I've gone around to business people in our community, and I've gone around to regular folks and gone to the educators and met with all of them over the last 10 months or so, they have a very different spin on it. They say to me, hey, we really thought that things would change because there was going to be a Republican from Lake County, and now there's a voice in there. And they said it hasn't changed at all. If anything, it's gotten worse. That's their perception. And I believe it's a valid perception. So that hasn't solved the problem. Just by being a Republican from Lake County isn't going to solve the problem. What it takes is folks from Lake County of whatever political persuasion to go down to Indianapolis and say, look, I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to say I'm coming down here and I'm going to vote for every Democratic issue as Hal's voted for every Republican issue. Not going to do that. I want to work with you. We can't carry this mentality that started in Washington, D.C., where you can't even, if you have coffee with somebody of the other political party, you are chastised or you're censured by your own party. We have to go back to the day where we find common ground, we reach across the aisle, and we work on projects that benefit our constituents, that benefit this state, regardless of whether we're Republicans or Democrats.